The vicious hydroblast vaporized the human soldier in a sizzling instant. But Dr. Jeffrey Gordon barely noticed the gory scene on the vidscreen. His eyes were glued to the impossible readouts flickering across his lab's main display. Human blood samples exposed to the Vorkarian's molecular destabilizer remained eerily intact, the cells stubbornly cohesive. Dr. Gordon's heart hammered in his chest. Humanity had a natural immunity to the aliens' most devastating weapon. For decades, the Vorkarians had subjugated Earth and her colonies, their military might rooted in the hydro cannons mounted on every warship and tank. Inescapable molecular disruption ripped apart any organic matter struck by the weapon's scorching beams. Humanity's finest armor may as well have been tissue paper, the massed defenses of mankind's allied worlds ever crumbling to red ruin. But buried deep in human DNA, a 50,000-year-old mutation had seeded the key to Vorkarian defeat. Dr. Gordon's gene scans revealed the human immunity factor, a protein structure that rendered cell membranes impervious to the hydrofield's catastrophic effects. Every man, woman, and child across the human worlds unknowingly harbored the secret weapon in their blood. Humanity could turn the tide, break the chains, rise as equals to the formerly invincible Vorkarians. The path forward shimmered in Dr. Gordon's mind, a cascade of military and technological advancements that would reforge the shattered human resistance into an unstoppable rebellion. But first, he had to get this data into the right hands before... The lab door screamed off its hinges in an avalanche of smoke and debris. Black-armored Vorkarian shock troopers poured through the breach, barbed rifles spitting scarlet death. Dr. Gordon slapped his console, firing off a data burst transmission even as molecular rounds stitched the air around him. Lead filled his guts as he slumped to the floor, his fading eyes fixed on the hollow of his wife and daughter, safe in a distant refuge colony. With humanity's future now resting on strong shoulders, he could die complete. The battle to cast off the yoke of alien tyranny started here, with his defiant, dying breath and the immortal power carried in human veins. The black void of unconsciousness receded, giving way to searing agony as Dr. Jeffrey Gordon awoke in a cold metal chair, his wrists and ankles bound by unyielding restraints. Harsh, white light stabbed his eyes, obscuring details of the stark interrogation chamber. The tang of his own blood mingled with the scorched ozone stench of Vorkarian technology. "Welcome back to the land of the living, Doctor." The deep, unmistakably alien voice sent fresh ice water cascading through Gordon's veins. He squinted against the glare, barely making out the towering form of Field Marshal Primus. Obsidian armor plates gleamed beneath a high-collared black cloak. Pale green flesh stretched tight over jutting cheekbones, framing eyes like smoldering coals. "You have something I want," Primus continued, stalking a slow circle around the captive human. "The data you transmitted before your capture. You will give me the encryption key." "Go to hell," Gordon spat, his split lips oozing fresh crimson rivulets. He retreated into his mind, clinging to memories of Alara's musical laugh, of little Mira's gap-toothed smile. Their faces shone like twin stars against the void. Primus's backhand cracked across Gordon's jaw, whipping his head to the side. Stars exploded behind his eyes. "We have ways of extracting information. Unpleasant ways. You will break." "Do your worst," Gordon snarled through bloody teeth. Dr. Singh's words echoed in his skull, stealing his drive. The greatest discoveries require the greatest sacrifices. And so began a hellish cycle of agony and defiance. Primus and his inquisitors unleashed a sadistic arsenal of pain, both physical and psychological. Gravity presses crushed Gordon's joints to jelly. Neuro-lash probes ignited every nerve ending in searing anguish. Hallucinogenic drugs dragged him into nightmarish mindscapes where his worst fears sprang to visceral life. Through it all, Gordon endured. He hardened his heart, retreating to an impregnable mental fortress whenever his body betrayed him with screams. No matter how they made his flesh howl, he would not yield. Even as he teetered on the brink of oblivion, he anchored himself to hope. Hope that his message had been received, that even now the resistance was mobilizing to seize humanity's chance at freedom. Miles away in the bowels of a top-secret resistance bunker, Aida Salim hunched over a glowing holodisplay, eyes gritty with exhaustion. The dark-haired woman bore the wiry build and coiled intensity of a veteran freedom fighter, her olive skin crossed by pale scars. "Ada, you need to see this." Marco Valdez, a grizzled Hispanic man with close-cropped salt and pepper hair, leaned over Ada's shoulder. On the screen, intercepted Vorkarian transmissions flickered past, the alien glyphs flowing through a decryption algorithm. Aida's finger stabbed at a specific line of code. "There, Apex Protocol. We've seen that before." "Bad news?" Tara Kyoto sauntered over, electric blue hair contrasting sharply with her black combat fatigues. The hacker's almond eyes danced over the data stream. "If it's got the turtle faces this worked up..." "It's big," Ada confirmed, ice forming in her gut. Mentions of Apex Protocol had surfaced before, whispers of some secret alien weapon project, shrouded in secrecy. If the Vorkarians completed it. The words of Dr. Gordon's dying transmission flashed through Ada's mind. Immunity factor, a weapon to break Vorkarian supremacy. Gordon's data might hold the key not only to human freedom, but to stopping the mysterious Apex Protocol. "He's running out of time." Ada rose, squaring her shoulders as she faced her hand-picked team. "Gear up, we're going after Gordon." The first faint rays of hope kindled against the darkness. But the road ahead promised only blood and peril. Within an impenetrable Vorkarian prison, a lone man waged a battle of wills, carrying the fate of worlds in his shattered body. And in hidden rebel enclaves, desperate plans and impossible prayers took shape, the embers of defiance stirring to flame. The first moves had been made. But the game was just the beginning. Aida Salim's fingers flew over the holo display, finalizing the mission parameters. Her team huddled around her, faces grim and focused in the dim light of the planning room. "We go in through here," she said, highlighting a network of tunnels beneath the Vorkarian stronghold. "Gideon, your point on this. Your intel is our lifeline." Gideon Reeves, a mountain of a man with a face like weathered granite, nodded silently. His eyes, haunted by memories of Vorkarian captivity, gleamed with cold tenacity. "Tara, you're on tech. Disable their systems, get us inside." The blue-haired hacker cracked her knuckles, a predatory grin spreading across her face. "Marco, you're with me. We find Gordon and get him out, fast and clean." The grizzled Hispanic veteran checked his pulse rifle, the well-worn weapon an extension of his body. "Ready when you are, boss." They moved like ghosts through the labyrinthine tunnels, Gideon's quiet directions guiding them past hidden sensor arrays and patrol routes. Tara's fingers danced across her datapad, weaving through Vorkarian firewalls like smoke. The first sign of resistance came at a security checkpoint. Marco's rifle coughed twice, muffled by its suppressor. Two Vorkarian guards crumpled, jade blood pooling beneath their armored forms. "Clear," he whispered, already moving forward. They found Gordon in a sterile white cell, his body a canvas of bruises and lacerations. His eyes, unfocused and glassy, sparked with recognition as Ada knelt beside him. "You came," he rasped, his voice barely audible. "Always," Ada replied, slinging Gordon's arm over her shoulder. "Let's get you home." The klaxons began to wail as they reached the main corridor. Plasma bolts sizzled past, scorching the walls. Marco returned fire, his rifle spitting death with mechanical precision. "Company!" Tara shouted, her datapad chirping urgent warnings. "Big fish incoming!" Field Marshal Primus strode into view, flanked by a phalanx of elite guards. His obsidian armor gleamed in the emergency lighting, eyes burning with cold fury. "Insolent vermin," he snarled, raising a wickedly curved plasma pistol. "You will not leave this place alive." The air filled with crisscrossing streams of deadly energy. Ada and her team ducked behind cover, returning fire in controlled bursts. Gordon slumped against a wall, barely conscious. "New plan," Ada barked over the din of battle. "Gideon, Marco, get Gordon out of here. Tara and I will create a diversion." Gideon's face hardened. "You sure about this?" Ada nodded, her eyes locked on a nearby data terminal. "We need more intel on their plans. This might be our only shot." With a grunt of acknowledgement, Gideon scooped up Gordon in a fireman's carry. He and Marco began fighting their way towards the exit, drawing the bulk of the Vorkarian fire. Ada provided covering fire as Tara sprinted to the terminal, fingers flying across the alien interface. "I'm in," she shouted. "But this is big. Some kind of weapon project. Apex Protocol." A stray plasma bolt caught Gideon in the shoulder, spinning him around. He stumbled but kept moving, Gordon's limp form still secure in his grip. "Go," Ada screamed at them. "We'll find another way out." As Marco and Gideon disappeared down a side passage with their precious cargo, Ada turned back to see Tara's face drain of color. "Oh God," the hacker whispered. "Ida, you need to see this." On the screen, schematics for a terrifying new hydro weapon flickered into view. Beside it, complex genetic data scrolled past, human DNA sequences interwoven with alien bioengineering. "They're targeting our immunity," Ada breathed, the magnitude of the threat crashing over her. "If they succeed—" A savage roar cut through the air. Field Marshal Primus charged towards them, his massive frame eating up the distance with inhuman speed. "Time to go," Tara said, yanking a data crystal from the terminal. They sprinted down a maintenance shaft, the sounds of pursuit echoing behind them. The information they carried could turn the tide of the war, if they could get it back to base. As they emerged into the acrid night air, Ada's comm crackled to life. Marco's voice, tense but steady. "Package secure? Gideon didn't make it." Aida's chest tightened, grief warring with the urgency of their situation. There would be time to mourn later. For now, they had to run. Behind them, alarms blared and searchlights stabbed the darkness. The real battle was just beginning. The rebel transport shuddered as it touched down in the hidden hangar, its engines cooling with a hiss. Aida Salim helped Dr. Gordon from the ship, his weight heavy against her shoulder. Marco followed close behind, his eyes scanning for threats, even in the safety of their base. "Get him to medical," Ada ordered, passing Gordon to a waiting medic. She turned to Tara, who clutched the stolen data crystal like a lifeline. "What did we get?" Tara's fingers flew over a nearby console, projecting a holographic display of schematics and genetic code. "It's worse than we thought. The Vorkarians are developing a new hydro weapon, one that targets human DNA specifically." Gordon, barely conscious on the stretcher, croaked out, "The immunity factor. They're trying to neutralize it." Aida's mind raced. "We need to act fast. Tara, start identifying potential targets. Marco, I want you training up every able-bodied recruit we have. We're going on the offensive." Days blurred into weeks as the rebel base hummed with activity. Tara's hacking skills revealed a sprawling network of Vorkarian facilities, each a potential target. Marco drilled new recruits relentlessly, molding them into a cohesive fighting unit. Their first target, a hydro weapon manufacturing plant on Corax Prime. Aida led the infiltration team herself, joined by Rakim Bashir, a wiry man with steady hands and an uncanny knack for explosives. They moved through the volcanic landscape under cover of darkness, the air thick with sulfurous fumes. Vorkarian sentries patrolled the perimeter, their elongated forms silhouetted against the fiery glow of lava flows. Rakim worked swiftly, planting charges at key structural points while Aida provided cover. A close call with a patrol had them pressed against a shadowy alcove, barely daring to breathe as alien boots clanked past. "Charges set," Rakim whispered. "We have 5 minutes." They sprinted for the extraction point, lungs burning from exertion and toxic air. The ground shook as the first explosions tore through the facility. Blinding light seared their retinas as chain reactions consumed the plant in a cataclysmic fireball. Their victory was short-lived. Vorkarian dropships screamed overhead, disgorging waves of black-armored troops. Plasma fire lit up the night as Ada's team fought a desperate retreat. "Go!" she shouted, laying down suppressing fire as the last of her people boarded the stealth shuttle. A stray bolt caught her in the leg, searing through flesh and muscle. Gritting her teeth against the pain, she limped aboard seconds before the hatch sealed. Back at base, the celebrations were tempered by their losses. 3 rebels hadn't made it back. Captured or killed, there was no way to know. Dr. Gordon, looking haggard but determined, pored over the stolen data. "We've bought ourselves some time," he said, "but it won't be enough. We need to hit them again, harder." Ida nodded grimly. "Tara, what's our next target?" The blue-haired hacker pulled up a holographic display of an ice-encrusted world. Thrixis, it's where they're doing the bulk of their genetic research for Apex Protocol. Marco stepped forward, his scarred face set in unyielding commitment. My team's ready. We'll hit them so hard they won't know what hit them. The assault on Thrixis was a brutal affair. Marco's squad fought tooth and nail through the research facility, leaving a trail of broken Vorkarian bodies in their wake. Tara slipped into the heart of the complex, her fingers a blur as she uploaded a virus that would obliterate years of alien research. Alarms blared as the facility went into lockdown. Marco's voice crackled over the comm. Tara, we're out of time! They barely made it to the extraction point before blast doors slammed shut, sealing off entire sections of the base. As their ship punched through Thrixis's icy atmosphere, Tara allowed herself a satisfied smile. That'll keep the bastards busy for a while. Word of the Hydro Hunters' exploits spread like wildfire through the resistance. New recruits flooded in, eager to join the fight. But with each victory, the noose tightened. Primus's forces seemed to be everywhere, always one step behind. In a dingy bar on the fringe world of Nexus 4, Colonel Darius Kane nursed a drink, his weather-beaten face hidden beneath a hood. He'd come here to make contact with a potential informant, someone who claimed to have intel on Primus's movements. The hairs on the back of his neck stood up. Something was wrong. He caught a glimpse of green flesh, the glint of obsidian armor. Kane's table overturned as he dove for cover, plasma bolts sizzling through the air where he'd been sitting. The bar erupted into chaos as Vorkarian shock troops poured in. "This is Kane," he shouted into his comm as he returned fire. "I'm compromised. Nexus R4. They know—" A stray bolt caught him in the shoulder, spinning him around. Through a haze of pain and smoke, he saw his squad engaging the enemy, buying time for the civilians to escape. Kane gritted his teeth and joined the fray, knowing that the fate of the resistance and humanity itself hung in the balance. The acrid stench of plasma burns and spilled blood filled Kane's nostrils as he fought his way through the chaos of the Nexus 4 bar. His shoulder blazed with pain, but adrenaline kept him moving. He glimpsed a flash of obsidian armor and fired, downing a Vorkarian trooper with a well-placed shot. "This way!" shouted one of his squad members, gesturing towards a back exit. Kane limped after them, providing covering fire as civilians scrambled to safety. The squad piled into their waiting transport, engines already humming to life. As they lifted off, Kane watched the bar erupt in a fireball, obliterating any evidence of their presence. "How did they find us?" Kane growled, pressing a med patch to his wounded shoulder. "Doesn't matter now," his second-in-command replied grimly. "We need to warn the others." Back at the Resistance's hidden base, Aida Salim received Kane's transmission with a mixture of fury and dread. Their string of victories had made them overconfident, and now they were paying the price. "We need to change tactics," she announced to the assembled leadership. "They're closing in on us, but we have one last card to play." Dr. Gordon stepped forward, his face haggard, but eyes burning with purpose. "I've analyzed the data from our raids. There's a way to neutralize their Apex protocol entirely, but we'll need to broadcast the information galaxy-wide." Tara's fingers flew over her console, pulling up a holographic display of a rust-colored planet. "Arachon," she said. "It's the hub of their hyperwave communication network. If we can access it, we can share the secret of our hydro-immunity with every oppressed species in Vorkarian space." Aida finished, a fierce grin spreading across her face. The plan came together with feverish intensity. Resistance cells across occupied systems pooled their resources, gathering a strike force unlike anything they'd attempted before. Aida and Marco would lead the frontal assault, drawing Vorkarian forces away from the communication hub, while Gordon and Tara infiltrated its inner sanctum. The desert world of Arachon loomed before them, its surface a patchwork of ochre and crimson. As their ships punched through the atmosphere, Vorkarian defense batteries opened fire, filling the sky with streaks of deadly energy. "All units, engage!" Aida's voice crackled over the comm. "Clear a path to that hub." The battle erupted across Arakon's barren landscape. Human fighters clashed with Vorkarian gunships, while ground forces exchanged furious volleys of plasma fire. Marco led a squad of heavy weapons specialists, their shoulder-mounted railguns punching through Vorkarian armor easily. Ida fought her way towards the towering spire of the communication hub, every step a struggle against waves of elite Vorkarian guards. She caught glimpses of Gordon and Tara slipping through the chaos, making their way towards a concealed access point. Inside the hub's fortified control center, Commander Yurlax sneered at the incoming transmission. "Pitiful humans," he hissed. "Your resistance ends here." The doors to the control room exploded inward. Gordon and Tara burst through the smoke, weapons raised. Yurlax's guards opened fire, forcing them into cover behind banks of alien machinery. "Upload the data," Gordon shouted to Tara over the din of battle. "I'll hold them off." Tara's fingers danced across the alien interface, fighting through layers of security protocols. A stray bolt caught her in the side, and she cried out in pain but kept working. "It's done," she gasped, slumping against the console. "Broadcasting now." Yurlax roared in fury, charging towards them with inhuman speed. Tara met his gaze, a defiant smile on her lips, as she triggered the detonator hidden in her palm. The explosion engulfed both her and the Vorkarian commander, giving Gordon the opening he needed to complete the transmission. Outside, Ada watched in horror as the upper levels of the hub erupted in flame. "Fall back," she ordered, her voice choked with emotion. "Mission accomplished. Get to the extraction points." As they fought their desperate retreat, messages began flooding resistance channels. From 1,000 worlds came reports of populations rising up, emboldened by the knowledge of humanity's advantage against the Vorkarians' dreaded hydro-weapons. But their victory came at a terrible cost. Vorkarian reinforcements poured into the system, their warships blotting out Arakon's amber sky. Ida's battered forces barely escaped the onslaught, limping away in whatever craft they could salvage. Days later, on the desolate mining world of Drexler's Folly, Ada stood before the ragged remnants of her team. Dr. Gordon's broadcast had changed the game, but now they faced the full wrath of an empire bent on their annihilation. "We've come too far to give up now," Ada said, her voice steady despite the weight of their losses. "Our next move will determine the fate of this war." In the distance, the first Vorkarian scout ships appeared on the horizon, heralding the storm to come. The harsh winds of Drexler's Folly whipped dust across the makeshift resistance encampment. Aida Salim surveyed the ragged remains of her forces, her fists tight. The victory at Arakon had come at a devastating cost, leaving their ranks decimated. Dr. Gordon approached, his eyes sunken with exhaustion but burning with purpose. "I've been analyzing the data from our broadcast," he said. "We dealt them a blow, but it's not enough. We need to amplify the signal, reach every corner of Vorkarian space." Ida nodded. "How?" "Their primary hyperwave communications array," Gordon replied. "If we could seize control—" "Impossible," Marco Valdez interjected, limping over to join them. "That array is on Kradrak, the heart of Vorkarian High Command." "Impossible is what we do," Ada said, a fierce glint in her eye. "Gather everyone. We're going to plan our biggest operation yet." Over the next weeks, the remnants of the Hydro Hunters threw themselves into preparation. Marco oversaw recruitment, scouring the fringes for anyone willing to fight. His efforts paid off when he returned with Zax Lorath, a scarred mercenary with a reputation for pulling off the impossible. "This is suicide," Lorath growled after hearing the plan. "I like it." Meanwhile, Ada pored over intelligence reports with Jillian Vox, a former Vorkarian drone technician who had defected to their cause. Vox's insider knowledge proved invaluable as they mapped out Kradrak's defenses. "The array's command bunker is here," Vox said, highlighting a section of the holographic display. "Heavily fortified, but vulnerable to a high-altitude insertion." When the day of the assault arrived, tension crackled through the air like static electricity. Ada addressed her troops one last time, her words spare but powerful. Then they were off, ships streaking through the void towards their target. The multi-pronged attack unfolded with clockwork precision. Marco's strike teams hit key defensive installations across Kradrak's surface, drawing attention away from Ida's infiltration unit as they plummeted through the atmosphere in stealth drop pods. Alarms blared as they touched down, immediately engaging waves of security drones. Plasma fire lit up the corridors as they fought their way deeper into the facility. Casualties mounted with each checkpoint, each blast door. "We're through!" shouted one of Ada's team as they breached the central core. But their elation was short-lived. A towering figure in obsidian armor strode forward, flanked by Vorkaria's most elite warriors. Field Marshal Primus himself had come to meet them. "Pitiful humans," he sneered, raising a weapon that pulsed with otherworldly energy. "Your rebellion ends here." The ensuing battle was brutal and swift. Primus's advanced weaponry tore through their defenses like paper. Soon only Ada, Gordon, and Lorath remained standing. Gordon, blood seeping from a dozen wounds, dragged himself to a nearby console. His fingers flew across the alien interface, uploading a data virus into the communications array. "It's done," he gasped. "Broadcasting. Now." Across the Empire, billions of beings watched in stunned silence as the truth of humanity's immunity to hydro weapons was laid bare. The deception that had kept the Vorkarians in power for centuries crumbled in an instant. Aida, her body broken but her spirit unbroken, turned to Lorath. "Get the survivors out," she ordered. "I'll stay behind to ensure the network transfer is complete." Lorath hesitated but nodded grimly. He half-carried, half-dragged Gordon towards the exit, pausing only to rescue a battered Marco Valdez from a holding cell. As they fought their way to an escape ship, the sounds of conflict echoed through Krodrok's corridors. The Vorkarian guard was fracturing, turning on itself as the implications of the broadcast sank in. Ada worked feverishly at the command console, coordinating with Jillian Vox to solidify control of the network. She could feel her strength ebbing, but pushed through the pain. There was too much at stake to fail now. As Lorath's ship blasted away from the disintegrating Vorkarian stronghold, carrying the torch of the rebellion with it, Ada allowed herself a small smile. The Hydro Hunters had struck a blow that would echo across the galaxy. The real fight was just beginning. The battered ship carrying Lorath, Gordon, and Marco limped through hyperspace, its hull scorched and systems barely holding together. As they emerged above Hadrian's Rise, a craggy world on the fringes of known space, Marco let out a shaky breath. "Never thought I'd be so glad to see this backwater rock," he muttered, wincing as he adjusted his makeshift splint. The landing was rough, their craft groaning as it touched down on the outskirts of New Antioch, the planet's lone spaceport. A crowd had already gathered, drawn by the ship's obvious battle damage. Zax Lorath was the first to emerge, his scarred face set in unbreakable spirit. "We need medical support," he barked at the onlookers. "And get me your leaders, now." Within hours, the remnants of the Hydro Hunters found themselves in a hastily convened war council. The cramped room buzzed with a mixture of hope and anxiety as Lorath recounted their strike on Krodrok. "Ada's sacrifice wasn't in vain," he concluded, his voice rough. "But this is nowhere near the end." Marco, his wounds treated but eyes haunted, leaned forward. "The broadcast worked. We're getting reports of uprisings across Vorkarian space. But without coordination, they'll be crushed." Dr. Gordon, pale but determined, manipulated a holographic display. "We need to capitalize on this momentum. Strike while they're reeling." A low murmur filled the room. Then from the shadows, a figure stepped forward. Karna of the Guldeen, her silver-furred mane overflowing with tension. "The Vorkarians have oppressed my people for generations," she growled. "We stand ready to join your fight." Lorath nodded, a spark of hope kindling in his eyes. "Then let's get to work." Days blurred into weeks as Lorath and Marco coordinated with rebel cells across the galaxy. Karna's Guldeen warriors proved invaluable, their nomadic lifestyle perfect for hit-and-run tactics against Vorkarian supply lines. On the war-torn world of Axiom Prime, Colonel Darius Kane crouched behind the twisted wreckage of a Vorkarian gunship. Plasma bolts sizzled overhead as his team advanced on a critical hyper-relay station. "Raphael," Kane shouted into his comm, "we need that override code." Raphael Grant's voice crackled back, strained but determined. "Sending now. You've got 2 minutes before their systems adapt." Kane's fingers flew across his datapad, inputting the stolen Vorkarian codes. The relay's defenses powered down, leaving it vulnerable. All units, go, go, go! The strike was swift and merciless. Within minutes, the hyper-relay's transmission dish erupted in a ball of fire, severing a vital Vorkarian communication link. Similar scenes played out across the Empire. Shipyards burned in the skies of Kaldon Prime. Vorkarian garrisons found themselves cut off and surrounded on a dozen worlds. But the Empire struck back with increasing savagery. Field Marshal Primus, his obsidian armor now scored and dented, stood on the bridge of his new flagship. The view screen showed the agrarian world of New Eden, its surface scarred by orbital bombardment. "Let this be a lesson," Primus snarled to his officers. "No act of rebellion goes unpunished." The ship's hydro cannons powered up, ready to unleash apocalyptic destruction. But before they could fire, alarms blared. A swarm of small craft dropped out of hyperspace, their engines burning hot as they dove towards the Vorkarian vessel. "Evasive maneuvers," Primus roared, but it was too late. The suicide run tore through the flagship's shields, detonating its reactor in a blinding flash. As the wreckage rained down on New Eden's fields, the seeds of a greater conflagration had been sown. Back on Hadrian's Rise, Lorith received the news of Primus's defeat with grim satisfaction. But there was no time to celebrate. Reports were coming in of a new Vorkarian atrocity, bioweapons unleashed on human worlds. "This ends now," Lorith growled, turning to face his assembled war council. "It's time to bring the fight to their doorstep." Homeworld. As Lorith's words hung in the air, alarms blared through the command center. A communications officer burst through the door, his face pale. "Sir, we're receiving a transmission. It's Admiral Jarvis." The room fell silent. Marco Valdez, his arm still in a sling, stepped forward. "Impossible. The fleet's been missing for years." The main view screen flickered to life, revealing a weathered face framed by a neatly trimmed silver beard. Admiral Jarvis, commander of the long-lost human fleet, gazed out at them from what appeared to be the bridge of an advanced warship. "This is Admiral Jarvis of the Terran Expeditionary Force," he announced, his voice gravelly but strong. "We've emerged from the Rhetoric Nebula in response to your call, Mr. Valdez. The cavalry has arrived." Lorith's eyes widened as the feed zoomed out, revealing a vast armada of sleek, powerful warships emerging from the swirling gases of the nebula. Their hulls gleamed with unfamiliar technology, a stark contrast to the battered rebel vessels. "By the stars," breathed Dr. Gordon, limping to the console. "How did they stay hidden for so long?" Before anyone could respond, another alarm sounded. This time it was Colonel Darius Kane's voice that crackled over the comm system. "Lorith, we've got multiple Vorkarian strongholds going dark across 3 sectors. Jarvis's fleet is tearing through their defenses like they're made of paper." The next hours were a whirlwind of activity. Lorith coordinated with Kane to establish a joint military command on Hadrian's Rise, their disparate forces coalescing into a unified rebellion. The return of Jarvis's fleet had shifted the balance of power, igniting hope in human colonies that had long suffered under Vorkarian oppression. But the Empire would not go quietly. As Lorith pored over tactical displays with Kane, a shadow fell across the room. They turned to find Karna, her silver fur matted with blood. "Assassins?" she snarled, collapsing against the doorframe. "They came out of nowhere." Kane's team swept the base, uncovering evidence of a highly trained Vorkarian death squad. Leading them was Inquisitor Thraxus, a name that sent shivers down the spines of even the most hardened rebels. The attack came swiftly and without warning. One moment, Kane was outlining their next offensive. The next, the room erupted in a hail of plasma fire. Lorith dove for cover, his reflexes honed by years of combat. But Kane wasn't fast enough. The colonel's body hit the floor, riddled with smoldering holes. Thraxus himself strode into the room, his armor gleaming black, a cruel smile twisting his features. "Did you really think you could hide from us forever?" Lorith fought back with everything he had, but Thraxus was relentless. Just as the Inquisitor's energy blade arced towards Lorith's throat, a deafening explosion rocked the building. Through the smoke and debris, Marco Valdez charged in, supported by a squad of Jarvis's elite Marines. Not today, you bastard, Valdez growled, unleashing a barrage that forced Thraxus to retreat. As the smoke cleared, Lorith found himself face to face with Admiral Jarvis. The older man's eyes were sharp, assessing. "We don't have much time," Jarvis said. "The Vorkarians are desperate. They're planning something big." Lorith nodded grimly. "Then we end this, once and for all." Within days, Jarvis had brokered an historic accord on Altair IV, formalizing the United Rebellion Concordat. Every rebel faction, from Karna's Golden Warriors to the scattered human resistance cells, now stood united against their common foe. As their combined fleets converged on Mortraken, the Vorkarian throne world, Lorith found himself aboard Jarvis's flagship. The planet loomed before them, its surface filled with defenses. "This is it," Lorith said, his voice low. "Everything we've fought for comes down to this moment." Jarvis nodded, his expression grim. "Primus is down there. Our intelligence suggests he's prepared to unleash something called the Extinction Protocol. We can't let that happen." Lorith's fists clenched. "Then we take the fight to him, directly." As the rebel armada engaged Mortraken's orbital defenses, Lorith and Valdez led a small strike team towards the planet's surface. Their mission, to infiltrate Primus's command bunker and stop the Extinction Protocol before it could be activated. The insertion was brutal. Half their team was lost before they even touched down. As they fought their way through the streets of the Vorkarian capital, Lorith could feel the weight of everything they'd sacrificed pressing down on him. They were so close to their goal when Thraxus struck again. The Inquisitor materialized from the shadows, his energy blade slicing through two of Lorith's remaining squadmates before they could even raise their weapons. "Valdez, go!" Lorith shouted, engaging Thraxus in a desperate duel. "Stop Primus, I'll hold him off." Marco hesitated for a split second, then nodded and sprinted towards the command bunker. Lorith turned to face Thraxus, knowing that everything hinged on buying Valdez enough time to complete the mission. The clash of energy blades filled the air as Lorith and Thraxus battled through the ruined streets of Mortraken. In the distance, the sky lit up with the fury of Jarvis's orbital bombardment. The end was near, one way or another. The energy blade clashed against Lorith's defenses, sparks flying as Thraxus pressed his advantage. Lorith's muscles burned, fatigue threatening to overwhelm him. In the distance, explosions lit up the sky as Jarvis's fleet bombarded Mortraken's defenses. A deafening roar filled the air. Lorith risked a glance upward to see a massive Vorkarian warship plummeting from orbit, trailing fire and debris. It crashed into the city's central spire, sending shockwaves rippling through the streets. Thraxus stumbled, caught off guard by the impact. Lorith seized his chance, driving his blade forward in a desperate lunge. The Inquisitor's eyes widened in shock as the energy weapon pierced his armor, erupting from his back in a spray of gore. "This cannot be," Thraxus gasped, his body going limp. Lorith wrenched his blade free, letting the Inquisitor's corpse fall to the rubble-strewn ground. He took a moment to catch his breath, then sprinted towards the command bunker. He had to reach Valdez before it was too late. The bunker's massive blast doors lay in ruins, torn apart by Valdez's assault team. Lorith navigated the smoke-filled corridors, stepping over the bodies of Vorkarian defenders. He found Valdez in the central command chamber, locked in furious combat with Field Marshal Primus himself. Primus fought like a cornered animal, his obsidian armor scored and dented. A vicious backhand sent Valdez sprawling, his weapon clattering across the floor. The Field Marshal raised his hydro cannon, ready to deliver the killing blow. Lorith's energy blade sliced through the air, severing Primus's arm at the elbow. The Vorkarian leader howled in agony, falling to his knees. Valdez scrambled to his feet, retrieving his weapon and training it on Primus's head. "It's over," Lorith said, his voice cold. "Surrender now, and we might just let you live." Primus's eyes darted between them, filled with hatred and fear. His good hand inched towards a control panel on his armor. "If I fall," he snarled, "I'm taking you all with me." Valdez's reflexes were faster. A single shot rang out, and Primus slumped to the floor, a smoking hole in his chest. "The Extinction Protocol," Lorath said urgently. We need to shut it down. They turned to the bunker's main console, a sprawling array of alien technology. Valdez's fingers flew across the controls, his brow furrowed in concentration. It's done, he said after a tense moment. The failsafes are engaged. Whatever Primus had planned, it's not happening today. Lorath allowed himself a small smile. Then let's end this war. The following weeks were a whirlwind of activity. With their leadership decapitated and their fleets in ruins, the Vorkarian Empire crumbled. World after world threw off the shackles of oppression, declaring their independence or pledging loyalty to the United Rebellion. As the dust settled, the newly liberated capital world of Altair IV became the focal point of galactic attention. Delegates from dozens of worlds and species converged on the planet, determined to forge a new future from the ashes of conflict. Lorath stood at the podium, gazing out at the sea of faces before him. Humans, Guldeen, reformed Vorkarians, and a host of other species filled the massive amphitheater. He took a deep breath, steeling himself for the task ahead. Today, he began, his voice carrying across the hushed crowd, we stand at a crossroads. The tyranny of the Vorkarian Empire has been broken, but the real work is just beginning. We have a chance to build something greater than ourselves, a united galaxy where all species can thrive in peace and cooperation. As Lorath outlined his vision for the United Galactic Concordance, he could see the hope kindling in the eyes of the delegates. It wouldn't be easy. There were still threats to face, wounds to heal, but for the first time in generations, the future looked bright. The vote was nearly unanimous. Lorath found himself thrust into the role of Chancellor, the weight of an entire galaxy now resting on his shoulders. He wasted no time assembling his team, calling upon the best and brightest to help shape this new era. Admiral Jarvis and the reformed Vorkarian officer, Raphael Grant, stood at attention in Lorath's new office, their contrasting uniforms a symbol of the alliance they were building. Gentlemen, Lorath said, leaning forward in his chair, we have our work cut out for us. The Vorkarian military assets need to be integrated into our defensive forces, and quickly. There are still pockets of resistance out there. Jarvis nodded grimly. Grand Admiral Zoran and his hardliners are causing trouble in the Outer Rim. They refuse to accept the Empire's surrender. Then we'll make them accept it, Lorath said, his eyes narrowing. I'm authorizing a series of precision strikes. We'll use our Hydro Hunter teams to take out these holdouts before they can gain any real traction. As Lorath coordinated the military efforts, he also turned his attention to diplomatic concerns. The xenophobic Kundari Empire had long been a thorn in the side of galactic relations, but recent pirate activity in their sector had left them vulnerable. Preceptor Zirista of the Kundari sat across from Lorath, her iridescent scales shimmering in the artificial light. Her compound eyes studied him warily as they hammered out the details of an historic agreement. In exchange for Concordance protection, Zirista said, her translator struggling with the complex harmonics of her native tongue, we are prepared to open limited channels for economic and scientific exchange. Lorath nodded, sensing the magnitude of this concession from the notoriously insular Kundari. We welcome your people into the galactic community, Preceptor. Together, we can achieve great things. As Lorath signed the treaty, a commotion erupted outside his office. Dr. Runa Vale burst in, her face pale with urgency. Chancellor, she gasped, clutching a datapad. We've made a terrible discovery. The Vorkarians. They were working on something called the Terminus Cell, a weapon designed to wipe out all non-Vorkarian life. Lorath's blood ran cold as Vale explained the situation. The accidental activation of a Terminus Cell dispersal chamber in a Concordance lab. The heroic sacrifice of Dr. Eric Demers to prevent a full containment breach. We need to convene an emergency summit, Lorath said, his mind racing. And I want every high-ranking Vorkarian prisoner interrogated. We need to know everything about this project. The revelations that followed shook the fledgling Concordance to its core. The Terminus Cell was just the beginning, a prototype for something far worse. The Xenotic Armageddon, a genetic doomsday weapon that threatened the very existence of all non-Vorkarian life. Lorath knew they needed help to combat this threat. He reached out to the enigmatic Assyrian Collective, a hyper-advanced civilization known for their vast data repositories. As Loreth coordinated these efforts, he couldn't ignore the rising threat of pirate activity in the power vacuum left by the Vorkarian collapse. He called Marco Valdez to his office, purpose etched on his face. "Marco," he said, "I'm putting you in charge of our new deterrence initiative. Your mission is to root out these criminal enclaves before they can gain a foothold. We've fought too hard for peace to let it slip away now." Valdez snapped to attention, a fierce glint in his eyes. "Consider it done, Chancellor. We'll show these pirates what happens when you mess with the Concordance." As Loreth watched Valdez leave, he felt the weight of responsibility pressing down on him. The zoonotic threat, pirate incursions, political maneuvering, the challenges seemed endless. But as he looked out at the bustling activity of the Concordance's new capital, he knew that together they could face whatever the galaxy threw at them. The work had only just begun. Loreth's office buzzed with activity as Dr. Runa Vale burst through the door, her face ashen. "Chancellor, we've made a horrifying discovery," she said, her voice trembling. "The Terminus cell was just the beginning." Loreth's stomach dropped as Vale explained the true nature of the Vorkarian threat. The Zoonotic Armageddon, a genetic doomsday weapon designed to rewrite the DNA of all non-Vorkarian life, had been seeded throughout the galaxy's primordial worlds. "Every species could already be infected," Vale concluded, her words hanging heavy in the air. Loreth wasted no time. He convened an emergency summit of the Concordance High Council, the gravity of the situation palpable as they assembled. "We face an unprecedented crisis," Loreth addressed the gathered leaders. "Our only hope lies in developing an artificial metagenome to inoculate all life against this zoonotic code." Enter Naztra Chiskora, supreme geneticist of the Assyrian Collective. Tall and willowy with luminescent skin that pulsed with bioluminescent patterns, Chiskora exuded an air of otherworldly brilliance. "Your primitive understanding of genomics is quaint," Chiskora said, their multifaceted eyes scanning the room. "But with our expertise, we may yet salvage this situation." The next 5 years saw the galaxy transformed. Entire moons were dismantled, their raw materials funneled into the construction of a massive ringworld structure. Chiskora named it Ark-Phyros, the new ark to preserve life itself. Loreth stood on an observation deck, watching as the final sections of the ringworld locked into place. A sense of cautious hope began to take root when alarms blared throughout the station. The viewport filled with blinding light as nuclear explosions rippled across Ark-Phyros' surface. Vorkarian purifier ships, remnants of the old regime, had launched a suicide attack on the structure. "Chiskora!" Loreth shouted into his comm. "Report!" Static crackled, then silence. The irreplaceable Assyrian scientist and their team were gone, along with humanity's best hope for survival. In the aftermath of the attack, Dr. Vale approached Loreth with a desperate plan. "We need to recruit children," she said, her eyes feverish with willpower. "Their neural plasticity might allow them to intuit the missing pieces of Chiskora's work." Loreth hesitated, the weight of such a decision crushing down on him. But faced with extinction, what choice did they have? Within weeks, a multi-ethnic group of Earth's brightest young minds had been assembled on Ark-Phyros. Loreth watched through a viewing screen as the children were connected to a shared neural link, their small bodies dwarfed by the ringworld's massive genetic databanks. Days turned to weeks as the children worked tirelessly, their minds merged in a collective dreamscape of DNA helixes and protein chains. Loreth barely slept, his eyes constantly darting between vital sign readouts and progress reports. Finally, after what felt like an eternity, a triumphant cry echoed through the command center. The children had done it. The universal counter-virus was complete. Concordance ships scattered to the far reaches of the galaxy, desperately racing against time as the zoonotic kill code began to activate. Loreth stood on the bridge of the flagship, watching the inoculant disperse into the void of space. As reports of successful genetic rewrites poured in from across the galaxy, Loreth allowed himself a moment of relief. They had won, but at what cost? Years later, an aging Loreth made his final pilgrimage to Ark-Phyros. The ring world had become a sanctuary for the children who had saved the galaxy. now ageless oracles, their humanity sacrificed in exchange for transcendent cognitive abilities. As Lorith approached the habitat's entrance, he steeled himself for what lay ahead. The true work of rebuilding the galaxy had only just begun, and the price of survival would echo through the ages.
You have reached the end of the story. If you enjoyed this story and want to support us, please leave a like and subscribe to our channel, and for every comment that says 88, I will heart every single one of them. Thank you for your time.